SMEs for investment, etc. And so that we're in a better position to actually grow this entire project going forward. Now, finally, given that investment in SMEs is not a slam dunk. Not every SME is going to survive. Some of them will collapse. Some investments will lose money. I think we also have to be prepared for some level of replenishment of the capital of the development bank. It may be on a 5-year cycle, it may be on a 10-year cycle, but so long as we're achieving the broader goals of job creation, of increased survivability of SMEs in which investments have been made, let us be prepared to replenish the funds to be able to continue doing the work going forward. So these are some of the key comments that I thought I'd like to share on how the DBG should be implemented. But all in all, we think it is a great program, and I like some of the things that Samson said around ensuring that they're independent directors, properly recruited with the right source of background, right sort of vision. And I think if we do this in a way that makes it foolproof or impregnable to changes in government, etc., this would be a really, really great initiative. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Awesome presentation, dealing with some key pieces of advice before answering my question. And what hit me, the bank must be ready to innovate. I think that's a powerful point. We also need realistic expectations. You are suggesting a phased approach, which is amazing. We also think that the DBG must think of building the ecosystem. I didn't think about that. The ecosystem has about 15 odd companies. We need 30, 50. I'm not sure if they started doing that, Dr. Etiahini would not say they are going away from their mandate, they are spreading themselves too thin. But what we know is that once you are the leader in any sector, growing that space is also part of your mandate. So we'll see how the cookie crumbles there. There is a needs of
this meeting is being recorded.
I just wanted to find out if you had any quick comebacks, because you sort of gave us a lot of food for thought at the beginning. So, Doc, just a couple of minutes, quick comeback on anything you've heard so far before I open the floor to the rest of the viewers. Please make sure your mic is on. Your mic is off. Thank you. So I'm sure he needs help. His mic is off, so please put his mic on and so he can talk to us. Good.
Yeah. Hello.
Doc, you're on. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. I think I like the bit of what Mr. Park said. I think he sums it all, and I like the way he went around it. And I like about what Antinora also said, because I've dealt with him in the Agua. I've dealt with him. And I think they do understand the business. And I believe if we can even get people like that to be on the board, it will set the very good agenda for the business, because he's been in it for 40 years. I've known him when he was in Agua. I was also in a bank. And I believe if we can get people like that to cram up at the board, I believe we will be able to turn this country around. The Development Bank, let me say, it is the only way forward for us to turn this economy, to improve, to reduce poverty, poverty alleviation, job creation, the huge unemployment, and economic growth. So I think for all that I've heard, I think it's a laudable and a very interesting program.
I have a direct question for you. One of the biggest threats to anything we do in Ghana is lack of political continuity. 4-year, 8-year change in government, everybody wants to start afresh. How do you think this government should go about this so that even if there's a change in government in 4 years or 8 years or whatever, it does not suffer the fate of some good projects which have become white elephants because we didn't build political will across before starting it.
You know, Bernard, the simple thing is that we don't seem to have a national agenda. What we have political agenda. And a nation should have its own national agenda, which will be pursued by all political parties. We'll build consensus. Because this program, these development banking, I think is a laudable, but there should have been consultation even with those who are not in the party, so that you see, so that we can build something that will be a time for 10 years to come. But this country, we don't have consultation. They sign you as I speak to you. If I tell you how I have suffered because I speak a lot, they tell me with so many names. Today, as I speak today you hear the name they will call me. Immediately I step out. Bernard, you will be very surprised. I like what Samson said. He even said that they consulted people like me. I'm not saying he didn't consult me, but the point is that we don't do consultation. We don't do You've done very well. Let me commend CTFM and the investment. You've done very well because you are the only station who are bringing people together to see where we are going and where we want to end up. Other than that, it becomes a political think tank. People bring in and talk. But the way you listen to everybody is explicit in their own field, expertise, competences. So I think if the nation wants to go forward, we must have consensus building and having a national agenda. Other than that, 8 years, this one is down. 8 years, this one comes in. We cannot go anywhere. Countries like Chile, let me cite an example. Chile decided that they would do development banking. Do you know what they do? It's only for forestry. Now they control export of paper and pulp to almost all the European countries, billions of dollars. So I believe if we have a national agenda, we can build consensus about this issue. That's why I want to commend you again. You people have done well, and I greased your elbow. Continue to do that, because this is the only forum that different people with background, those of us who they have aligned with so many political parties, can speak our minds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Samson, I don't know if you're there. Your video, I can't see you. I wanted to bring you back in.
I am here, Bernard.
On a couple of things. So, Nora was very brief but very powerful, where she says, if they can't compete, after will destroy them. So after is a double-edged sword. And she says they need money to replace obsolete equipment. Now, I want you to give us some assurances that the thinking of the people behind this is tailored towards that. Then secondly, Jerry made some very powerful points. He says, number one, you need to grow the ecosystem, because it's not just 15 companies that are going to make this work. You need to grow the ecosystem. Number two, he says you need to have realistic expectations and probably have a phased approach, because you want to make sure it's working. You don't want to waste the $700 million, because you're going to then run into problems. And then he also talks about other things. I just wanted your quick response to Nora and Jerry in terms of the concerns they raised in their presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bernard. I mean, when Dr. Etiahene was speaking, I was just wondering that maybe he's also a prophet or something. And he was talking. Yeah. But, yeah, Bernard, I think that I've listened to Nora, and quite frankly, people like him, I mean, I think are the real heroes of our country. I mean, the conversation of a successful development bank cannot be had in a context of polling the government. So when we have forums like this, and you listen to people like Nora, you listen to people like Jerry, then you get it's quite heartwarming. I think that it is very clear to me from all the policy conversations and the work. You know, I quite remember the World Bank in particular also formed a whole big team in helping us to come up with the framework for the development bank. And some of the people in their teams were from Chile. You know, they had a very, very broad team, you know, and when I even saw it, I was like, oh my goodness. But I realized it took a lot of time, but it was very helpful. And it was clear to us that we must make the development bank work for people like Nora, but also work for people like Jerry. And that is why the minister keeps saying that the development bank, in public, a lot of the conversation quickly shifts to banks. But anytime the minister is speaking, you realize that he says banks and non-banks. The whole idea is that there must be some deliberate commitment to see how do we ensure that the whole ecosystem and the financial architecture is developed around the development bank. And then we also realize that we have been repeating, especially the minister has been repeating every day, that the development bank is going to support the retail development bank or institutions. He mentioned ESIM, he mentions ADB, and of course, all those, and even GIF, because we also realize that the UK is trying to see how they can even deploy an investment development bank to support. In fact, even Ghana was really started this before that conversation even started in the UK. So for me, I think that as a country, we're just lucky that we started working on this development bank for a long time. And then COVID came. Then we also have situations where there is a heightened demand for jobs because educational system continue to open up and create more educated young people who need support. And I think that if there is anything that I would add before probably I go to my last point is that, look, I think it's so important, Bernard, that these development banks must work. And it must work for young people. I mean, it is just so important. And it must be bipartisan. I mean, I think it is so important that this development bank must work. We've tried it before. We have achieved some success. We have learned from what we have done in the past, and we are trying to do something better. So it must work. It must work for young people, and it must be bipartisan. And being bipartisan, what the government has done, quite frankly, is that, one of the most extensive process of passing the Development Finance Act is to ensure that bipartisan process is anchored. So through the Development Finance Act, a lot of work has been done with Parliament, both sides of Parliament. And then we have built expectations and the framework for what we want to do. And I think that there must be continuous conversation as to how we are going to do this going forward. But I can assure you that it took 3 years to get this development bank to come to fruition. And one of the key things is the bipartisan nature. The second thing is that the professional engagements. There was an engagement in 2018, 2019. Those engagements were done by PwC India, I remember. And through those engagements, a lot of private sector people, including commercial banks, the likes of the capital market players were engaged. And that even set the tone for the whole work. So, yes, we need these conversations to improve, especially on the side of government up to the launch, where we hand over to the professionals who will then be in the business of getting this thing to work. But we must also know that the disciplined approach to this development bank is very painful. And I look forward to see how we can really get people like Dr. Etiahini, people like Nora, and the rest to see, like maybe in very practical and straight terms. Okay, look, we have done something. We want to get there. Let's come to the government. Let's see, okay, what are the 3-4 things that we need to continue to do so that we can get there? Because at the end of the day, this institution is very important. It's very important for us, especially the future of the country. And again, this institution is going to benefit from the entire ecosystem. When I get a chance again, I will talk that the development bank is one top institution, but there are other key initiatives in the financial sector that are supposed to anchor the development bank as well. And I think that all these are very important going forward.
Thank you. I want to announce that it's 11:30. We advertised 10 to 11:30, but because we started over 20 minutes late, we want to plead with participants to bear with us for us to run till the top of the hour. So please forgive us because we have technical problems at the beginning. So we have at least 20 minutes more, and I'm going to make judicious use of the time, so please forgive me. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments. Nora, I wanted to ask you a direct question, if you don't mind. Listening to Dr. Etiahene and Jerry, they both keep talking about ruthless focus, strategic focus. For example, Jerry said some people are doing just chocolate or rice imports or just broiler imports. Focus on one thing. I noticed in your comments you said you were looking more about which aspect of business needs support, as in getting new equipment. You didn't so much go into sector. Is there any particular reason why you prefer to look at the aspect of business that needs support as against the sector that the bank should focus on, Nora?
See, as an executive of the Association of Ghana Industry, I just wanted to put forward the needs of industry at large. But what has been stated here is so true. It is very important to be very targeted, to be focused. Now, there are certain sectors that generate a lot of employment. For instance, the garments and the textile sector. If we look at the countries like the US, like China, they entered into manufacturing through garments and textiles. That's a very critical area. You know, the entry point is easy, although it involves a lot of investment, infrastructure, equipment, and skills development. That's one area. And then agriculture. We have arable land. We have the potential. COVID has taught us the importance of organic foods. Ghana should be doing very well in that area, for instance. We're doing well with rice production, but unfortunately, certain policies need to be looked at so that we are more competitive and then we are not overrun by the imports. So I didn't mention those sectors, but it is very important for us to approach this in a very targeted way. And we have to look at agriculture. We have to look at garments and textiles. We have to look at ICT for sure, because globally we are going digital. It's so important for marketing, for protecting your own markets and so on. And then there is something I mentioned that you missed out. I spoke about public and private sector partnerships, but there's also the need for public and public sector partnerships. The Ministry of Finance does need the partnerships of other ministries, departments, and agencies. I'm going to pick an area where people don't pay much attention to and we don't think much of. That is in the area of our imports. You know, let's take my sector, for instance. Why are we still importing uniforms into this country? And I'll mention a very sensitive point, but we need to be very open and plain if we really want to get somewhere. There's this national census exercise ongoing. So I called to find out about uniforms for the people on the field. And guess what? I found out that uniforms have already been imported into the country. I can only say imported because I'm at a position where I know what is being manufactured in most factories in the country. Which means that rather than give these contracts to locally established factories, there are local investors who are putting so much. And this is why I didn't even want to be specific in certain areas. There are investments, local investors, and we need to protect this because the growth of our economy is reliant on these manufacturers. So we need the partnership of these agencies, these departments. They need to partner with the Ministry of Finance to make this work. What is the use of providing necessary funding at competitive rates? And then we continue to import in bulk into the country to compete with the very manufacturers that, or the manufacturing sector that we're trying to grow. We wouldn't be making sense. So we all need to work together. We must understand we are in this together and we must survive. We must survive for so many other sectors. There are things that are of concern to us. These will only work if the manufacturing sector is successful and our economy is successful. So I hope I have.
Thank you, Nora. I've heard a few things in my life. I didn't know about public partnership. I'll make a note of it. I'll read around that, but I'll also ask something to comment on that later because I think it's a very powerful point you've made. I just wanted to ask Jerry a quick question on agriculture and agribusiness. Jerry, because your time was short, you didn't elaborate a lot on what you wanted to say. But I keep hearing strategic focus, and a lot of the examples I'm hearing are in agriculture. With Injaro and what you do, you really know how agriculture works. You put some long term in agriculture. What is the key to getting it right when it comes to giving long-term money to agriculture for a strategic reason? I just wanted you to elaborate a bit. You gave a chicken example. You gave some rice examples. Just give us a few more insights into, if we're going to focus on agric, how should we think about that investment? And how can we make sure that it works? Because now it's government procurement that can also help. So just give us a bit more insights there, Jerry.
Thank you very much, Bernard. So, investing in agriculture fundamentally isn't very different from making any other investment. And the success of the investment, in my view, starts from the viability of the end market, right? So the reason why I picked, for examples, importation of rice, importation of broilers, and chocolate, is that in all of these markets have an established end user demand, right? Chocolates are eaten all over the world. So if you can backward integrate and invest into a company that is manufacturing chocolate in Ghana, you can almost be rest assured that once the branding and the sales and marketing is done, you can get that chocolate sold. And I think for imported products, it's even easier because you've already demonstrated a local demand for the product. You know what price people are prepared to buy that product at. So then you have a target production cost that you're trying to achieve at the level of the company. So if a company is able to achieve that production price, then they can, in principle, sell the product into that local market, substitute the import, and keep those profits in Ghana, create those jobs in Ghana. Now, I'd like to allude to what Nora mentioned, which is a public-public partnership. I'd probably like to call it joined up or coordinated strategy between different government departments. So let me take the example of, say, a local fruit juice processor that's trying to take advantage of local production, say, of pineapple, oranges, etc., package fruit, and then sell it to our local grocery stores. You juxtapose this with the fact that you probably have a huge importer of juice passing products through the ports, not paying taxes or duties, and as a result, being able to deliver that same product onto the shelves at a lower price than the person who's producing it locally. This is an example of how the lack of joined-up strategy or effective implementation of government policy across several departments can actually impact an investment. So suddenly you move from a situation where, on paper, local production of that fruit juice should have been viable, but because from an execution perspective, customs is not levying the right duty or someone is taking a bribe somewhere, suddenly you've blocked the opportunity for a local agribusiness to be viable, right? So it is very important that government recognizes that if we want to achieve any one of these strategic objectives, a very careful analysis, end-to-end analysis of all the various contributing parts of the value chain has to be done to ensure that when an investment is made in that SME, that is trying to tap into that rice opportunity, that is trying to tap into that chocolate opportunity, when that investment is made, it doesn't get frustrated by the fact that certain other enabling elements are failing or are not performing. And this is something that we see in our business on a day-to-day basis because we have to deal with it at a micro level. But generally, you need to have, as with other investments, strong teams with the right sort of skill sets, strong corporate governance, very strong financial management, actually stronger in agriculture than anywhere else. I often like to say that agribusiness is probably one of our tougher sectors to operate in, and yet we often leave it to our least qualified people. So if there's an appeal I can make, it is for our talented young Ghanaians to go more into agribusiness, apply the technology, apply the new ideas, and hopefully help to build the sector a little more. Thank you. Over.
You just developed the agric investors paradox. The agric investors paradox that agribusiness requires the greatest skill, yet we leave it to the least skilled. It's almost like the innovator's dilemma. Jerry, I'll credit you for that. Thank you for those insights. I want to read some comments from the public. Then I'll bring the discussion home for final responses because there's a comment that I feel we should let something address. I don't want to make it back and forth. So I'm going to start off with the Zoom comments. Bright Pa Akpapavi says, from the discussion, it appears the issue with inadequate financing to industry from the bank is the continuous increase in NPLs. If the financial landscape is not enhanced to correct the increase in NPLs by the establishment of an efficient and transparent credit bureau, the banks will still face the same challenges in disbursement of funds from the development banks. My question is, does the BOG, with the oversight of the development bank, have plans to strengthen credit bureaus? So this question is to BOG. This is not the only conversation, but Samson, take note of this question. If NPLs are high for traditional banks and universal banks, what makes you think that if development bank gives the money to another institution, the NPL ratio will still not be high? Good question from Bright. Second question from Adelaide Norte. It says, I would like to know which vacancies will be available since it is a wholesale banking move. Are there going to be branches available? Bernard, my fear was the political continuity on jobs in our country. So Adelaide is asking about job creation with the bank itself in terms of how many people will be employed. Will they have branches? I suspect the answer to that will not make Adelaide too happy because this is a wholesale bank. So probably I just one unit, less than 100 people, Adelaide. But I won't answer. I'll let somebody answer that question. Another comment from Zoom, Seth Kunedu Ewa. He says, there are a lot of opportunities with the aerospace and aviation industry in Ghana to foster economic growth and development through education and training, provision of capital for startups in aviation and tourism. We can generate a lot of revenue through the promotion of domestic tourism and air travel. There are lots of innovations and creativity going on in that sector. What role can the banks play to bring some of these innovations to fruition? Seth, we want to narrow down. You are broadening us. We want to narrow into poultry or broilers. You are taking us into aviation. Thank you for your comment. Opei Muwoyome says, Ghana is fortunate to join the few League of Nations with development banks. This government has taken a bold step to initiate this. What is left is a conscious effort in ensuring sustainability and ensuring the expected outcomes are strictly adhered to. So that's from Opei Muwoyome. Let me go to Facebook. And read some quick comments. Felix the Flexiboy says, if I understood the director well, 75% of funds will be long-term funds. So I suggest it should be channeled to pre-financing government capital projects like roads. Wow. Different idea. He says we should pre-finance government capital development projects like roads. Dr. Chahini, you are laughing so hard. Well, that's Flexiboy's view. He also says, Bernard, ask the director of finance to throw more light on the first point he made, saying that development banks will not lend to private individuals. I don't get that point clearly. Well, I can answer that question. His point is that there are either retail or wholesale development banks. Retail development banks deal directly with borrowers. The wholesale lend to organizations who then on lend. So that's what he says. It doesn't mean you won't get the money. It won't come directly from them. So I've answered that question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Samson just 2 minutes to respond to some quick questions. Finance Ministry, can you help with public sector linkage, a coordinated strategy? Nora and Jerry asked that question. There was also a question about non-performing loans and whether the Bank of Ghana shouldn't be strengthening credit bureaus to make this process work. And then somebody wants to know whether they can get a job in a branch. I know you disappoint them. Samson, you have the floor as we try and wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the first thing is that, yes, I think I should even answer the phase approach. Yes, Jerry actually emphasized that point. I know that because we have a pipeline of funds from the EIB, the World Bank, a lot of people are thinking that we are going to get 700 million and then it will come to the bank immediately. No, there's actually a phase or a tranching of the a tranching of this whole finance, especially aside the equity and the tier 2 capital. Everything is going to be phased, and I think it's important that I make that point. The second one is that, luckily for us, because of the COVID and then the response to COVID, the Ministry of Finance and the entire government has come towards a coordinated approach to really getting the economy to recover and also revitalize the private sector. And so by that, we have the Ghana Cares program, which, government has been using. So any coordinated approach, especially in the first phase of the development bank, is likely to dovetail into the Cares program. So a lot of the areas that Nora mentioned, especially the textile industry, and all really reflected in the Cares program. And I think that is important. In terms of the branches, Bernard, I think you've done a good job. Every job in the development bank will be through, quite frankly, it's going to be to a competitive process. And then it's a wholesale bank, so there will not be branches. There will not be so many branches, or in the first several years, there's going to be one office for the development bank because it works through other financial institutions. And then I think the other question is that, in fact, I think that in answering the issue of MPLs, the first thing, I think I'll say three things quickly. The first one is that, yes, I think the central bank has been doing some work to get the credit reference bureaus to be enhanced. And I think that process really has been, we've done a lot of work on that, but we will still continue to make it better. But fundamentally, one of the key pragmatic steps of giving money to SMEs is that we must get, as I said at the beginning, you see, when you get your private equity firms, your venture capital, those people just don't give credit to institutions without tackling the real things that those institutions need. So if you want to reduce your MPLs, one of the basic things that we need to do as an economy is to formalize a lot of these SMEs. And that is where we are very key to make sure that the capital market institutions that do those things are ready. And I think I made that point very strongly in my earlier presentation. And I think that the last key point is that I think that the development bank is being worked on, is going to be launched. We are tackling a lot of the questions that are coming from people. And I'm really very happy about the focus on government, because as for government, we know the responsibility that is required to do the right thing is very, very high. And I think we've tried to answer that. But I think the last aspect that should not be lost on us is the private sector readiness. You see, that private sector readiness, the key part that I think we need to do at the Ministry of Finance is to probably continue the engagement process and deepen it as you're about to launch the bank. But there's also a lot of responsibility on the AGI, on the SME space, the associations and everything, the Venture Capital Association, the Impact Investor Climate, to make sure that they are ready so that whatever capital the development bank is having can be deployed at a faster pace so that we can see the progress of the intervention on the economy and jobs very fast. Because you all know that this development bank is a private sector model. It's a credible institution. It's just going to give money to institutions that are well run, that are capitalized, that have capacity to expand. And therefore, it is not an institution that is just going to give money to private sector institutions that are not ready. So what mechanism does the private sector need to put in place so that our businesses will have the capacity to access the credit, both from the commercial banks and from the non-bank financial institutions? I think that is also another big debate that, Bernard, we need to take up and see what we can do so that the responsibility of government and the responsibility of the private sector in being ready for this institution is actually, that equilibrium is achieved. I think that is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me take Jerry a quick comment on NPLs. You already deal with institutions. How are you able to make sure you get your money back?
So actually, I wanted to make a more high-level comment on the NPLs. That's part of the reason why we see high NPLs in our banking sector is because there are a lot of MSMEs taking the wrong type of capital for the stage of life of the business. The average entrepreneur in Ghana has an idea, and the first thing they say is, oh, let me go to the bank for a loan. When in reality, at that stage of their business, they probably need equity, i.e. patient capital that could wait a few more years before expecting the first repayment. And because they're so keen to get the bank finance, they go to the bank and say, oh, if you give me this money, in 6 months, I'll start generating cash. The bankers don't have the capacity to check whether this is true. They make the loan, and then there's a default, and NPLs go high. So one of the key things that the development bank will be doing is filling the financing gap with the right type of capital for each stage of the business. So in some cases, it's going to be early stage equity, growth stage equity, or in some cases, it could be cash flow based lending through credit funds who will be able to lend money to companies with a lower need for collateral than you would expect from a deposit-taking institution. So I just thought it was important to add that perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just read one final comment from Facebook, and then I'll take closing remarks from everybody. Yaopebi is asking, Dr. Yaopebi, he's asking, is our development not too piecemeal? What is the overarching national dream and strategy to which this development bank piece should contribute? I'd love to see a simple diagram that captures the Ghanaian dream, all the essential contributing elements. Very interesting question. Probably will lace that into your closing comments. I'm going to give each panelist 2 minutes to wrap up. I'll start with Dr. Tuahini. You set us off. What are your key takeaways? Then I'll come to Nora. Then I'll come to Jerry. Then I'll end with Samson before I bring Amma from IIG to give us some way forward. So, Doc, please put his mic on. Just give me your final quick comment on what we've learned so far.
I think, Bernard, my issue is the technical and capacity building of the participating financial institutions and other non-financial institutions. I believe that emphasis should be there to train those who are going to receive these monies very well. Because I don't think at the moment, from my experience, we have the skills and competencies to deal with the areas. So I urge Samson that he should look at capacity building, technical assistance and capacity, so that we can set in every PFI, we can have a unit designated as a project office whose job is to handle this and do it expectedly. And they have to be trained in the skills we are talking about, because Jerry was talking about Greek. Recently, I took a trip, as I told you. I visited one of the largest pineapple producer and manufacturing. And when I went there, I saw a lot of things being done that we need to replicate. But I wonder whether those who are going to assess the credit, the institutions, will they have the competences to be able to help the industry? That's why Nora said that they are not bankers, if you remember her first comment. And it is true. The last 10, 20 years, I've been in the industry. I think that skill has gone out of the industry, and everybody is talking about retail. So I urge Samson that he should not lose track of capacity building and technical assistance to the PFIs and the non-banking to be able to let them deliver to support the growth of the economy. That's my only comment now.
Thank you, sir. Nora, I'll give you the next platform.
Bernard, on a lighter note, I sent the flyer to a friend, and his comment was, "Don't let the men bully you." I happen to be. Let me thank Samson for your very kind words. I do appreciate that very much. I want to say that Dr. Tuahini and all the panelists really, and Samson, have put forward very important contributions. Mine has been very easy. Private sector, most of you already know our challenges and our difficulties and so on. I just wanted to add one more thing. Dr. Tuahini, you've mentioned the technical know-how. When I first exported under AGOA, what within 90 days was to have brought in technical expertise from Sri Lanka. we have not been paying attention to that very need for most factories. It is so expensive. I'm serving on a board now, I was serving on a board. It's a skills training and entrepreneurial development institution. And we are looking at boosting technical skills locally, but we have some way to go. So there may be the need for, this is why I spoke about the public sector partnerships. There may be the need for, let's say, the Ministry of Trade and Industry to look at how to provide technical assistance to go with training for our local personnel, maybe for a period of 2 years, but an intensive training. Dr. Etuoyin, you mentioned training because you understand it, as you rightly said. You understand what it takes. Training for manufacturers, for factory floor management, and training also for staff of the banks. These are so critical if we're going to be successful. And, I want to keep mentioning that local entrepreneurs are doing so well. They're creative, innovative ideas. There's the tenacity, and Samson, you passed a very, I'm very grateful for what you said, that, we should be celebrated. We've been through a lot and we are still standing, but there is a lot that we have to give, and we are going to grow our economy. We are the engine of growth. We keep saying it, but we have to make it real, and the support must come. Technical assistance to grow factory floor expertise is so important. It's so key. Entrepreneurs know what they need. They know what the market needs. We have built businesses around the needs of our communities and so on. Global needs, we understand it. Some of us have access, international markets. We are able to do so, but there are various things that we need to deal with on the ground, and we have to attack this.
Thank you, Nora. Let me now bring in last but one, Jerry. I don't know if Jerry is there or he's dropped off. I think Jerry is dropped off. So let me bring in Samson for your closing comments.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bernard. I really and quite honestly appreciate this conversation. The first thing that I will say is that we must make the private sector as the engine of growth work. And this conversation requires that, a lot of people, including especially the young people, know that when you are looking for jobs, when you are looking for opportunities, that collective idea that how do we make sure that our country works, and that is the private sector that must create jobs, not government, is so fundamental. And the development bank is one way that we want this to happen. In terms of the issues that have been raised, yes, I think that we identified a lot of issues. All the efforts that have been done is to make sure that we prepare this particular institution to respond to them as much as possible. And we welcome any ideas and views going forward, because it is in the collective interest of the country. In terms of capacity, yes, that is also important. We have, for the banking sector, we are experimenting that capacity building again with GESEL. And I think that the banks through the National Banking College are being supported so that they are trained on agricultural value chains and everything, so that they understand the business, and then they support it with financing. And I think that at the development bank level, that support will continue. We already have grant facilities from KFW, and I think even under the World Bank to get that care. And even our own Ghana Care program have funding that is available to train the government. Also, on a broader level, one of the reforms under the Ghana Economic Transformation Progress was to transform MBSSI into the Ghana Enterprise Agency. And the idea about the Ghana Enterprise Agency is very important. Actually, part of the key things to show that this public, the ministries working together is to make sure that the Enterprise Ghana, for short, just similar to what happens in Singapore, provides the needed training and skills to the private sector. And I think that we should also take our eyes there and see how we can make that institution more impactful for training, especially the SMEs across the country. And lastly, in terms of the Development Bank is looking at the entire ecosystem of the financial architecture. You know that we already have very important institutions like the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, the Ghana Exim Bank. We also have interventions through the GAT banks, and then some local banks. Then we also have the Capital Market Master Plan. And through the Capital Market Plan, government also has done a lot of policy interventions to make sure that the venture capital, the private ecosystem, and then also the private equity funds all work collectively, so that when a development bank starts, we can see that policy coordination. There's also a conversation to learn from the likes of South Africa through the PIC, to learn from Singapore through Temasek, and see how we can actually position the country to start thinking, fundamentally about equity financing, as opposed to this whole idea about debts. Because as Jerry said, every businessman who starts a business wants debts. Debt is not the capital that is required to grow the private sector, especially at the beginning. And so, I hope that in the next couple of 2 to 3 years, the Development Bank will superimpose on this all architecture, and then we see from the efforts in financial sector development side, we can see how we can get the financial architecture ready to support private sector-led growth and economic development. So thank you, Bernard, and thank you, everybody, and the audience and my colleagues.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Jerry, I'm going to skip you because I think you spoke before the final round and we lost you. But I'm sure your points are well made. What I want to do finally is to bring in really the person who conceptualized this idea with us at City, Amalati, who's the chief executive of the Impact Investment Ghana, or Impact Investing Ghana, to give us some sort of more information about IIG because it's new in Ghana. And also what else we can expect from them going forward, because we know that it's not just one program they're doing. They really want to take up the clarion call to grow the ecosystem. So Amma, thank you for joining us. I'm giving you the last word, which also will be a vote of thanks. So you are doing everything for us before you go. So Amma, please take it up.
Thank you, Bernard. What a great discussion it has been. And we started off with Alex sharing his vision of what this means practically for a young person. And I will end by talking about how innovation happens. Innovation happens when you put people who are different in a room and begin to have conversations, ask the right questions, and follow up on those conversations with concrete action. So when questions are asked about procurement, concrete action follows. That means that some business is getting a contract and some innovation is enabling a startup to get financing. And that is what Impact Investing Ghana is about. We are a private sector-led initiative to drive innovation to increase impact investing in Ghana. Impact investing is simply investing with a clear social or environmental impact in mind that you measure and you drive. And we do things like this conversation, bringing people together to innovate about things that are going to be done by government or the private sector to ensure that we're building better. We're building things that are better suited for our country, and we're creating a strong enabling environment. We also do things to develop the capacity of the ecosystem to deploy and absorb capital. We're doing a project now with pension funds. We support asset owners like pension funds, even individual investors, to understand what impact investing is, to understand how within the constraints of Ghana, they can ensure that their capital is achieving impact in addition to financial return. We do training for fund managers. We support enterprise support organizations. That didn't come out so strongly in this conversation. Accelerators, incubators, and other support organizations that are a very vital part of the ecosystem if we want to grow MSMEs in Ghana. And then we do research. We're currently doing a baseline ecosystem mapping research. It's the first in Ghana to really identify all the organizations, including the very unusual ones that don't come up in most international reports, to identify the gaps, to learn from what has worked well in the past, and to be able to create a baseline so we can track change and the impact of our programs and other programs on the ecosystem. So there's a lot of exciting things that will be happening this year. There'll be dialogues like this one, and there will be training programs. We will have the research report that we hope will really help everyone make better decisions about how to use impact as a tool. And we look forward to being able to invite more of you to some of those events. We're part of a global network called the Global Steering Group for Impact Investing, and through that also partner with other African countries who also have similar organizations to drive impact investing. So thank you so much, Bernard, and thank you, panelists, for spending this time with us and with our audience to really talk about how we can make this development bank work well for Ghana, work well for entrepreneurs, work well for impact.
Thank you very much, Amma, and we are very proud to be associated with you at City. Just by way of thank yous, I want to thank Dr. Richmond Etuahene for your patriotism and your scholarship. I really appreciate what you do. And it's good I've met you personally now after a long time. Thank you. I want to thank Mrs. Nora Bannerman-Abbott. You are just an example for all of us. We are so proud of you, and we are willing you on. Jerry Parks, you are the kind of voice we need. And I hope you take up the offer if they put you on any of these boards, because you know your onions very well. So please don't say no if any offer comes up. In addition to what you are doing with the Ghana Venture Capital Association, we need you in the space. And Samson, thank you for your convening power. A lot of times people underestimate the convening powers of people in government. And I feel the finance ministry itself is like one of the most important cogs in the government wheel. It's not surprising that when the president announced cabinet, the first ministry he mentions is finance. Because if we take you out, nothing works. And we appreciate the minister for allowing you to do this. We also appreciate Dr. Ansu and the team, because there's a very big team that's been working on this. I also want to say a big thank you to Ike and Africa Business Media team for the work, and Mary as well. Mary has been laboring night and day with Ike and Abba and all of them, working behind the scenes to make this happen. We are hoping to do something else around this area, this time from a location. We want to go to a university, get the students to get involved, because they are the ones who will be thinking of opportunities. So there's a lot more coming up. But a big thank you to all of you. My name is Bernard Abbott. Thank you for being on this platform. We will edit and put some parts of this on social media for the rest of the world to watch, so the conversation continues. Have a good afternoon. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
We don't see any idea. Also, the check book cover.